Hey, as we continue to discuss being faithful stewards of God's gifts and resources in light of eternity, remembering that salvation is a free gift from God, but reward is based on faithfulness. I have a question for you as we get started. Do you have a junk drawer in your house? You know, like one of those drawers that just, it collects all of the things that there's not a place for. And a lot of it's things that maybe you don't really need on a regular basis, but you can't bring yourself to throw away because maybe I'll need it one day. In my house, I not only have a junk drawer, I have junk cabinets and junk garages. And what I notice is like they collect more and more over time things that I have a hard time throwing away, but I would never turn around and buy again. And I hold on to them either for sentimental value or because I think, well, maybe one day, 7 years in the future, this particular thing this cord might come in handy. And typically they don't ever. I just amass more and more junk. But what's amazing is at some point in my life and at some point in your life, everything in your junk drawer, if you have a junk drawer, was something you really thought you needed. You really thought you wanted, you probably really thought would bring you some sort of happiness. And what we learn is basically every possession that we have might bring us a spike in happiness, but hardly ever does it remotely live up to our expectation of what we thought it would do for us. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about Matthew 16, chapter 6, verse 19 through 21, where Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." Now, on this earth, we all have different things that we consider treasures on this earth. Sometimes it's because we think there's great monetary value. Sometimes it's because there's a lot of sentimental value to what we have. One of the most depressing things you can do is have a garage sale. Like, I love having a garage sale for getting rid of stuff in my house, but it is so depressing to think that like I spent all of this money on something that somebody's now offering me 25 cents for. Where did the value go? My daughter works in a pawn shop. And it's been a really fascinating experience for her as she has people come in because they sell a lot of jewelry, which means they buy a lot of jewelry. People will come in thinking, I have this ring and it's worth $15,000. And, they look it up and research and they're like, I'm sorry, I can give you $1,000 for this ring. And there's this great offense and shock because my ring was worth $15,000. And it's like, no, you paid $15,000 for it. It doesn't mean it's worth $15,000. It's worth what somebody's willing to give you. And everything that we get essentially lowers and lowers and lowers in value as time goes on. And yet we store up these things and they don't bring us joy, they bring us stress. And Jesus gives us an alternative. Instead of storing up and hoarding trinkets, Jesus calls us to exchange trinkets for treasure. He says, don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, which are really just trinkets because moth and rust destroy or they're devalued or they become obsolete. Lay up for yourself treasures in heaven because in heaven, the moth can't get to it, the rust can't get to it, and it's never going to be devalued. Okay, so what are the treasures that you can store up in heaven? And in my experience, the most important thing that you can think of with that, treasure is people. How do I know that treasure is people? Because I look at what Jesus died for. Jesus died for people. The God of the universe, the infinite God, gave the supreme sacrifice for man and woman, for people. Why? Because he finds them of that high of value. And he's redeeming them to his glory. And so if Jesus finds you and I of treasure enough value, of great enough worth to give his life for us, then I need to look around at the other people around me and realize, man, they are treasures in the eyes of God. And the greatest thing I can do is whatever I can do to help them come to Jesus so that ultimately they will be in heaven and then the new heavens and new earth afterwards. So to me, treasure is people, and then treasure are the things that we produce for worship and the glory of God. And so I want to store up praise in heaven. I want to store up worship of God in heaven. I want to store up my prayers in heaven. I want to store up people in heaven. And so even with my finances, I can't just throw my money in the air and it go to heaven, but I can find things that I know that God is behind, and I can be faithful and generous to those. I started that when I was like 4 years old. First giving, I got $1 or $2 a week. I'd give a dime or 20 cents at a time. And then as I got a little older and got jobs that paid more than $2 a week, give $1, give $2. If I made $20, give $2. And I just learned, because my parents taught me, be faithful with what you have because it really all belongs to God. And so with my money, my possessions, I can store them up in heaven by being generous, giving to the church, giving to missionaries, giving to the poor, giving to those who need. With my time and my talent, I can store up riches in heaven by giving those things to the service of God. And then most importantly, I want to store up as many people in heaven as I possibly can by telling them about Jesus, telling them about the love of God, the sacrifice of Jesus, and the salvation offered to him. So my encouragement to you, every time you open your junk drawer, every time you open your junk closet, every time you have a garage sale or you drive by a pawn shop, remember that at some point, every one of these possessions, we valued at a supreme level, and now they're basically somebody else's junk or our junk. So let's not keep investing in junk. Let's store up treasure, and let's have that treasure waiting for us when we get to heaven and get to be with Jesus.